In the bustling market of Aduakiti, the air was thick with the lively sounds of traders and buyers. Tunde, a hard-working and honest mechanic in his late 30s, was finishing up his last repair for the day. His brow was furrowed, but it wasn't from the car's engine. Something beyond the vehicles was clearly troubling him. His younger brother, Bayo, approached, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Brother Tunde," Bayo called out. "I heard they are planning to read Baba's will tomorrow morning." Tunde's face darkened further, the cloud already hovering above him grew heavier. "Bayo, I hope you haven't put your ears where they shouldn't be. Our father deserved peace." "Ah, but I only overheard. And you know, people are already talking, saying the land was gifted to Uncle Aid before Baba." "Enough, Bayo," Tunde cut in sharply. The thought of their father's prized land, which they had kept as a family treasure, being taken away was too much to bear. Later, Tunde reached for his phone, dialing his wife, Sade. Her voice crackled through the line, warm and reassuring as always. "Tunde, are you finally heading home?" "Food is ready," she sounded hopeful, but he sensed her concern. "I'm coming, Sade. But let us talk when I return." "Is it about the will?" she inquired with the clarity of a woman who knew her husband's worries. "Yes," Tunde replied simply, his voice strained. "Tomorrow, they'll decide on Baba's land. I'm afraid of losing everything he left us." The next day, the dimly-lit room where the will was to be read was packed with relatives, close and distant. Whispers filled the air, carrying hidden agendas in their wake. Uncle Aid sat with an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance, sending a chill down Tunde's spine. As the elders began, Tunde felt the weight of responsibility for his family resting heavily on his shoulders. "Aid has been a brother to me," his father's voice echoed in his memory. But Tunde couldn't shake the feeling of a snake in the grass. Baba's wishes were clear, Elder Rufus spoke, adjusting his glasses. The land was to be divided equally among his children. "But," Uncle Aid interrupted, "Baba had promised me that portion years ago. We were like brothers." The room murmured with a mix of support and skepticism. Tunde's eyes bore into Aid's face, searching for any flicker of honesty. "Baba never mentioned this to us, Uncle," Tunde replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Why does it surface only now?" Elder Rufus's gavel resounded as he declared, "There will be an investigation, but if Aid's claims hold, the land will be his." Tunde's heart dropped. Everything felt like smoke. He could grasp nothing of certainty anymore. His lineage, his children's heritage, possibly slipping through his fingers. When Tunde returned home, Sade was waiting on the porch, her eyes full of questions and support. "The land," Tunde said flatly. "Uncle claims it was his." Sade's face fell. "What will we do now?" Tunde shook his head slowly, exhaustion shadowing every word. "I don't know, but I need to find proof, something to set things right." The days turned into weeks, and as the land dispute loomed over Tunde's life like a dark storm, his workshop suffered. He often caught Bayo stealing glances at him, pity mixed with suggestion. "Tunde, we can fight this," Bayo urged one night. "There are ways, you know?" "I don't want trouble, Bayo," Tunde replied, his tone resolute but tired. Yet inside, desperation clawed at him. As Tunde lay awake next to Sade, sleep proving elusive, he whispered into the night. "What will I do if we lose? The children, Sade? What will be their future?" "We've always had each other," Sade murmured, entwining her fingers with his. "But you know what's right in your heart, Tunde. Don't let go of that." In the weeks leading to the final decision, whispers grew fangs, turning into vicious rumors that hounded Tunde at every corner of the market and neighborhood. Some said he had squandered his father's fortune, others claimed he was planning to sell the land to outsiders. At his lowest, a letter arrived, unsigned but clear, suggesting a meeting at a local bar with someone claiming to have information on Uncle Aid's deceit. Tunde hesitated, but the shadow of loss drove him to accept the invitation. When he arrived, the bar's dim light highlighted a figure in the corner. The man's face was partially obscured, but he beckoned Tunde to join him. "I know about Aid," the stranger stated matter-of-factly, sliding an envelope across the table. "Proof of his plans to take everything. But you must be careful. Tunde's hands trembled as he accepted the envelope. "Why help me?" he asked. "Because some truth must come out, even if it's too heavy a burden for others." Back home, Tunde emptied the contents of the envelope, a series of signed papers, letters with details matching those of the claims Aid made. Tunde's mind raced, hope tingling at his fingertips, knowing this was enough to make his case. But would the elders believe him? Would they see the truth amidst the lies Aid had sown? The night before the final assembly, Tunde sat with Sade, his heart a battleground between hope and despair. "If this doesn't work," he said quietly, "then I'm afraid our children will have nothing." "But you have the truth now," Sade insisted, her eyes fierce. "Let that be your strength tomorrow." The morning brought with it a tense calm. The room was full once again, the air tight with anticipation. Tunde stood, voice steady, presenting his evidence before the elders and the gathering crowd. Uncle Aid's composure began to crack, his confident mask slipping as each piece of truth was laid bare. Just as Tunde felt a glimmer of victory, Elder Rufus spoke. "Before we move any further, we must hear a confession. Aid, everyone deserves one last chance to speak truth." The room's silence was palpable as all eyes turned to Uncle Aid. Would he admit to his deceit, or did he have another trick hidden up his sleeve? The next words spoken would determine the fate of the family's legacy. Uncle Aid squirmed under the pressure of Elder Rufus's gaze. The room was a theater of hushed whispers, eyes locked onto Aid, waiting for his confession with bated breath. Tunde, standing tall, clutched the evidence with a desperate grip, knowing his family's future hinged on this moment. Aid finally spoke, his voice a slick mixture of defensiveness and reluctance. "I never meant to bring harm. Baba did promise me, but perhaps I let my greed cloud my judgment." The crowd stirred, murmurs of disbelief and betrayal flickering like a low flame. Tunde's heart swelled with a mixture of vindication and resentment. But somewhere deep inside, a quieter voice whispered, urging caution. Elder Rufus intertwined his fingers, a thoughtful expression creasing his brow. "Aid, your choices have not only brought shame to this family but have tainted your relationship with your brother's memory." Uncle Aid's eyes dropped to the floor, his earlier arrogance drained away. The weight of Rufus's words seemed to press upon him, physically bending his shoulders. Tunde watched, unsure if he felt satisfaction or pity. Sade had once said, "A broken trust is hard to mend, but not impossible." He wondered if the family could ever truly heal from this fracture. In the midst of the confusion, Bayo sidled up to Tunde, whispering urgently, "Brother Tunde, what about the next steps? We can still make him pay in more ways." Tunde, despite everything, shook his head slowly, an inner struggle flaring within him. "No, Bayo. This has to stop. Revenge will only deepen the wound." Bayo looked unconvinced, his expression betraying a hunger for retribution, yet undeniably touched by the tired solemnity in Tunde's eyes. As the assembly continued, talks of restitution hung in the air. Tunde felt a darkness settling upon him. The room felt smaller, the air denser. He excused himself, needing space, clarity, and most urgently, peace. Sade found him outside the gathering hall, the sun a fading promise of light against his troubled silhouette. Her presence was an anchor. With her hand finding his, Sade murmured softly, "Tunde, you don't have to carry this alone." His heart clenched, the reality of everything crashing down, the anger, the betrayal, his children's future. "I thought once this was over, we'd find peace." But his words tapered off, leaving a raw silence in their wake. At home, the weight of the day's events refused to lift. Tunde found himself staring at the family Bible, his fingers brushing over its well-worn cover. It had been years since he sought comfort in its pages. He found himself wishing for the clarity of his father's wisdom, words he could no longer seek. Sade sat beside him, her voice a gentle authority. "You know, sometimes the answers we seek are nearer than we think." Sade flipped open the Bible, turning to verses that spoke of peace beyond understanding, forgiveness beyond human capacity. Her voice, though soft, filled the room with purpose. Romans 12 verse 19, "Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, 'It is mine to avenge, I will repay,' says the Lord." Tunde's eyes moistened, the words piercing through the turmoil in his heart. It's hard, Sade. How do I let go when every part of me feels wronged? Sade squeezed his hand, her eyes holding his with unwavering belief. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or welcoming deceit back into your life, Tunde. It means you release the power it holds over you. Her words felt like a balm, an echo of the hope he so desperately needed. He nodded slowly, the knot in his chest loosening ever so slightly. Maybe revenge wasn't the answer. But he wasn't sure if forgiveness was entirely within reach either. Yet, the light of an eternal peace seemed to flicker in the distance, promising solace. The days following the assembly, as the dust of conflict began to settle, a tentative calm returned. Uncle Aid had retreated to his home, leaving Tunde to handle the aftermath. Though some family members still whispered, others gave Tunde silent nods of respect. Tunde found himself at the market, re-establishing familiar rhythms. Occasionally, a trader or neighbor would stop by, clapping him on the shoulder, offering words of encouragement or small gestures of reconciliation. It was during one of these days at the market that Pastor Adebaisi, a longtime family friend, approached Tunde. His eyes held a gentle understanding as he said, "Tunde, can we talk?" They found a quiet corner, and Pastor Adebaisi spoke without preamble. "You stood for truth, and that's commendable. But remember, Christ teaches us to heal, not through revenge, but through reconciliation." Tunde nodded, the old tug of bitterness against pride shifting within him. "I know, Pastor. It's just harder in practice than in theory." Pastor Adebaisi's smile was warm, yet knowing. "The hardest battles are often within us, Tunde. But like Christ bore our burdens, we don't walk this alone. Prayer might not change others, but it changes us." His words resonated deeply, echoing Sade's unwavering faith and the scripture that lingered in his heart since that evening by the Bible. Tunde realized that perhaps change wouldn't come like a thunderbolt, but through consistent, humble steps towards grace. The decision to act was slow, steady, like the rising sun. Tunde approached Sade one evening, hesitation mingling with resolve. "I think it's time I spoke to Uncle Aid again." Sade, ever supportive, simply nodded. "Go, and may God guide your words." He knew now it wasn't about forgiving Aid for Aid's sake, but for his own heart to mend, releasing the hold that anger had over him. Arriving at Aid's modest home, Tunde felt a tightness in his chest, a blend of anxiety and anticipation. As the door opened, Aid's expression was wary yet surprised. "Tunde," Aid greeted with a mix of caution and curiosity. Tunde inhaled deeply, voice deliberate yet soft. "Uncle, I came not to accuse or belittle, but to try and understand, to lay down my grievance at God's feet instead of yours." Aid's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't speak. Instead, he simply nodded, inviting Tunde inside with an unspoken plea for relief. Sitting across from each other, they spoke. Words flowed, words of bitterness, of pain, but also of understanding. Tunde shared his anger, his fear for his family's future, and Aid responded, revealing his own vulnerabilities, the cracks hidden beneath the facade. In this exchange, Tunde began to see the seeds of forgiveness, a gift not earned through penance, but through the grace of Christ, which he sought deeply as they spoke. In Aid's eyes, Tunde saw a reflection of himself before the morning assembly, hindered by stubborn pride, a warped longing for peace. He realized forgiveness was less about Aid deserving it and more about freeing himself. As Tunde left Aid's house that evening, a small but significant weight had lifted. The path ahead remained long, marked by continual choices to trust God's plan over the anger that once dictated his steps. The scriptures Sade read to him played softly in his mind, promising a peace he had begun to taste but would continue to discover. At the heart of his journey, Tunde understood forgiveness wasn't a single act but a continual surrender to a love greater than his understanding. Standing in his small home, surrounded by the warmth of family, he found himself offering a prayer not for the absence of trials, but for strength in the face of them. As he closed his eyes, seeking peace beyond his own capability, Tunde knew that this new journey, uncertain though it may be, was where God had intended him to walk all along. A path illuminated by grace, leading him slowly but surely back to healing, to hope, to home.
Thank you so much for listening to this intriguing story. I hope it touched you or taught you something. For more stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the page. And guys, if you'd like to see a part 2, or you have thoughts on what happened, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.